welcome, welcome, welcome to this here 150th episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi. I am, of course, your host, Mark Kush Nez. Hi, everybody. How are y'all doing? Hopefully well. I'm here to talk about games, some news, and even a question or two. And by question or two, I just mean the one question I got last week. If you'd like to ask a question and have it answered on the next episode, leave a comment on this here episode, and I will report back to you the following week. That's right. So next week in relation to this here episode. Keep it game related, because all other questions can be asked in the Patreon exclusive Q&A. I'll get to that at the end of the show when I do all my plugs, but if you are interested in supporting me and my nonsense and you enjoy all this crap, patreon.com/pxs, blah, 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 blah. But we're here to talk about games, including Metal Slug Tactics, Tetris Forever, Tinkertown, Selfloss, Vampire Hunters, Skater, Solstice? I just realized that I look at that word, I hear it, and I don't feel like I've ever said it out loud myself. Solstice, right? Solstice is not right. And Hannah's a game. It's also a name, but it's the name of a game. But if you've noticed, to go off topic immediately, and I mentioned talking about this in the description, the written description of last week's episode, I wanted to just comment a bit on the quality or lack thereof of recent shows that you may or may not agree with, but I feel has been somewhat apparent. And it's just speaking of parents, we'll get to that because that's related. In the time since my father had his severe, what would you call it? Severe stroke? It's a severe stroke where he almost, or he could have not made it very easily. He was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks, maybe. Intensive care for a week and change. It may have been around 3 weeks. He was in the hospital for a long time, and it was really touch and go for that first, maybe almost week. Maybe by the end of the first week, he was looking pretty positively going to make it. And then it just became the question of how much this was all going to affect him. It was difficult early on, and he has since recovered mostly. And to most people, and by most people, I would say everyone except me, he is seemingly the same person who was pre-stroke, but there are slight differences. And they are slight differences I notice because I live with him. And it has been difficult dealing with those. And the subtle ways in which he's changed that I don't want to get into specifics. I'll keep that to friends and family. And for me, family, it is my friends. So you all know who you are. I appreciate you just in general, but through all this stuff, putting up with me and just being there. I appreciate all of you extra. But in that time since, it's just been emotionally very difficult. And then you add on top of that the things my friends have had to deal with or go through of varying degrees that I'm not going to get into because I'm not going to talk about friends' personal matters here, but that kind of stuff affects me greatly emotionally because I care about those people. So anything that may bring them any kind of issue, it's going to impact me a lot. When celebrities die, a lot of people get sad about that. And then I feel weird for not caring. the one I always think back on mostly, or most of all, is Robin Williams, because a lot of people who I was friends with at the time, they took that very hard because they grew up with Robin Williams. I guess I did too, but I never loved him in the same way. I like him when he's taking on serious roles, but his comedic roles, his stand-up, I never found him all that funny. And especially later in life, things that I enjoyed as a kid, like Hook or Jumanji, just didn't quite work for me anymore. But even celebrities who I do really like, when they pass, I think, yeah, that's sad. But I don't go any further than that. I don't believe I've ever shed a tear for a celebrity who died. And usually when someone tells me, oh, this person died, I'm like, okay. Like, what do you want me? You want me to cry about it? I don't know the person. I appreciate their work, but I don't know them. So why should I care in any significant way? But that is very much a me thing. I'm curious what the common reaction to that kind of stuff is. Am I more in the majority or am I in the minority? I feel like I'm in the minority based on my personal experience with people and the way they've reacted to such losses. But taking what I've experienced in these past few years and then what friends have experienced, it's been a very difficult time. And on top of that, I'm not really sure if I ever had COVID. I never tested for it, so I don't know. I could have been asymptomatic, but I wouldn't be surprised if I got it, because unless it's just fucking brain fog by osmosis, I don't know. But that has been something I've dealt with too over the years, the recent years, where it's just everything is more of a jumbled mess than it usually is. And I feel like it's come through the content, this mess that I've been in, and I feel bad for lowering the quality. Again, you may or may not agree, and I'm sure it's a very wild, varying thing that's been going on in terms of some episodes you do enjoy or are great, you'd say, and then some are just But in general, overall, I'd say I just feel like I've let y'all down, and I want to be better about that. So I'm trying to do that, making a proper show notes document again, so I can keep track of things, which will help me because my memory and all that is just absolute disaster. And yeah, I think that's about it in terms of all that jazz. We can get on to the real meat and potatoes of the show, unless there's anything I could think of before I transition. But I mentioned a question I got from last week's episode in the comments, and that question is from Jedi. You might have received it by the next episode, but what's your excitement level for the PS5 Pro? What's the first game you'll play on it? So, I have yet to receive my PlayStation 5 Pro because, as you know, I was one of the lucky few to actually get the 30th anniversary edition of the PS5 Pro with all its gray glory and extra crap that I really don't want. And I am kind of... my excitement level for it is weird in that if Enshi, my friend, didn't fail to get the anniversary digital version, that one, and wasn't then open to taking my PS5 digital OG version, there's 100% chance I would have canceled this pre-order because, well, I told them that their taking my PS5 was a significant factor. I lied because it's really the only factor. I should not be spending this much fucking money on an iteration of a console that doesn't need to exist and is the most, it's not the most, but it's one of the more pointless iterations in any console generation, I'd say. Made even more pointless by the fact that the PS5 digital is going to be going on sale. I'm not sure if it already is through December, all of December 31st. I forget that news story, but $70 off, so $380. Whereas this is $700. Mine is, of course, $1,000 because this is fucking anniversary thing. It's just the most stupid purchase in the world because, contrary to popular belief, popular by who, I don't know. It may not actually be popular belief, but I could actually use the money and shouldn't be spending it on this, but the fact that I somehow managed to get it, I feel obliged to keep it. And I am excited about it because I do have a lot of love for PlayStation and PlayStation of that era, the PS1 and the PS2. So getting something that is celebrating that does mean something to me. I'm still butthurt. I would rather have the PS4 one, and I think I could get that on eBay for less than this. But I really shouldn't. That said, you asked me what I was excited about in terms of games and all of that jazz, or how excited I am, and then what I'm going to play first. I said after successfully getting the pre-order that I'm finally going to play The Last of Us Part 2. The thing is, I kind of want to play The Last of Us Part 1 again prior. I don't think I'll end up doing that because I want to play the remastered version of that, or the remake. Not the remastered, because the remastered version is the one that came out on PS4, and then we got the remake, which is it just, I think, did they just call it The Last of Us Part 1? Is that how they differentiated it? I'm not entirely sure about that, but I would like to play that. I don't think I'll do that, but with this Pro coming my way, I am excited about playing PS5 games. It's the worst way to get excited about the PlayStation 5 because I don't need it. I can play all these games, but with it, it's rejuvenated my desire to play some PlayStation games. So I've got The Last of Us Part 2, number 1 on the docket, and then kind of want to play Days Gone after that. Then there's God of War Ragnarok, Horizon, Forbidden. Do I replay the first one, the remastered version, and then go to Forbidden West is 2, Zero Dawn number 1? But there's also God of War Ragnarok. I've got plenty of stuff that I've yet to play on my PlayStation. I got Spider-Man 2. There's so much. There's so many options. And as much as it's a stupid reason, it has kind of gotten me excited to play PlayStation games again. Though I realistically should not keep this pre-order. And I know that every single one of you is saying, even if you didn't want to keep the pre-order, you should keep the pre-order and then just sell it because you'll be able to make a lot of money from that. I know, I get it, and I understand that the fact that I didn't go into it with the mentality of planning to resell it, it doesn't matter. I don't like doing that. It would make me feel very dirty, and I would much rather just cancel it. And I don't know if that would just then put one more available on the store to pre-order out of the blue, or if it would just keep one in stock for any potential kind of return situation. but I don't like doing that. The only way I am okay with selling something above MSRP is if I buy something for me and then just never get around to it for whatever reason. The greatest example, or the best example for me, is a Lego set. So I had quite a few Lego sets that I just never got around to building, and then years pass, don't really know where I'd put them if I put them together. I'm not as much into Lego anymore after that creator retirement snafu that really pissed me off. So what was I going to do with them? All right, I'm going to sell them. They're unopened, they're brand new, so I feel more comfortable selling those than used now that I've had my negative experience with a buyer that one time. So that's just the way I am. But yeah, that's me. Speaking of the PlayStation 5 though, and PlayStation in general, we got some exciting news on the Xbox side regarding PlayStation, kind of, and that is the announcements that Death Stranding, the director's cut, shadow dropped on Xbox. And I am very excited about this because now I don't have to play that on my PlayStation. I can play it on my Xbox and get achievements. However, it seemed like I didn't read any of the actual text. I just saw headlines, and the headlines made it seem like this was its debut on Windows as well. And I don't know if they were just referring to the director's cut specifically or not, but Death Stranding came out on Xbox or on Windows 2 years ago with achievements and everything. I thought I bought it. I didn't. I'm bummed about that because they delisted that. I don't know when. I don't know if they delisted it very recently in preparation for this, but I'll never be able to get those achievements now. It makes me sad. But I'm excited about Death Stranding making its way to Xbox. And with that news, I believe, came the announcement that Kojima Productions fully owns the rights now as well. Which makes me wonder, I'm sure there's going to be a window of exclusivity, but maybe it won't take 5 years to get Death Stranding 2 on Xbox as well. But regardless, it's just nice that they own the rights. Go Kojima. And then, keeping with the PlayStation theme of it all, Astro Bot has sold 1.5 million copies, and 37% of those who purchased Astro Bot had not bought a first-party game in the last 2 years, said Sony. This is very good for Astro Bot, and I would guess that when all is said and done, they'll probably double that for its lifetime sales to 3 million. I only really wanted to bring this up because I remember reading posts on Etc. and maybe some other places thinking, expecting, believing Astro Bot was going to sell 10, 15 million copies, and I just got a nice little chuckle thinking about the fact that those people, you're idiots. That's it. I just want to call a select group of the internet stupid for thinking Astro Bot was going to sell as good or better than something like Spider-Man 2. That was never going to happen. And then the last bit of news, GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition gets a prize update on console and PC, adds visual features that were exclusive to the mobile versions. So I looked through some of the updates or some of the things that have been updated. The biggest in terms of a visual update is the inclusion, the addition of the original filter or something along those lines that makes the game look much more like the original versions. And the difference is incredibly noticeable. You basically go from this empty nothing, no style or anything in the remakes and I don't know what the hell they are, and gives them much more of a stylized look akin to the original versions. But there have been updates to animations that make it look more like the original and so on. So that is not only exciting, but kind of gets me interested in going back and playing those finally as well for second runs. So there's a lot to digest and think about in this here upcoming fucking few months. The PlayStation 5 Pro coming in, this Definitive Edition getting patched and all that jazz. But yeah, that's all the news that grabbed me. You know what else grabbed me? Not so much. Metal Slug Tactics. So I was really excited about this game because I love tactics games and I love the Metal Slug series. And the immediate thing you'll notice if you play the game or have seen screenshots or gameplay footage of it is that it has that visual style and flair of the Metal Slug series that it is so well known for. It is the standout of the series, I say. The games, if you're unfamiliar, the main games in the series are run and gun side-scrolling shooters a la Contra, but more arcadey, I'd say, because they had arcade versions. None of all of them, but it feels much more akin to an arcade game, like a Sunset Riders or something in that vein. Come on, refocus, thank you. And the game, Metal Slug Tactics, looks great. It looks great. And it plays well. And it's structured in a similar vein to something like Into the Breach, where you are going on these short, hour-long-ish runs with 4 different zones. And when you are going through the zones, you'll get a little perk from area to area, from level to level, that might give you some gold that you can use to purchase upgrades or refill your special weapon ammo or get extra XP and so on and so forth. And when you complete a zone, you can choose to either go on to the final zone after you complete the first zone or tackle one of the other 2 zones. There are 4 zones in total. And the reason why you would not just go to the last zone right away is to build up your upgrades and make yourself stronger for that final fight. I played through 2 runs, and in both instances, I ended up dying, not because the game was super challenging. You can only play on the recruit level first until you beat the game. But I died because the game gets old very fast. I've only unlocked 1 additional unit. There are 9 in total. And I'm sure they vary to some degree, but they don't feel that different, at least these first 3. They'll have some different weapons, and they have some special abilities that are unique that give them some difference, but it's not to the same level as something like Into the Breach, where you have these distinct different armies that are very focused on different styles of play, whether that be defensive, offensive, using the enemies against themselves, and so on. And then eventually unlocking the ability to craft your own squad of all the different units to make something very unique. These are all military focused, different soldiers, so you'll have multiple who have machine guns for their main weapons, and here's one with a shotgun and a knife, and this one can throw Molotov cocktails and throw grenades. And then they have their unique abilities that allow them to help fellow teammates or do something offensively or whatever. But they don't feel that unique, and the enemies aren't that different, or it gets old fast. You feel like you've seen what the game has to offer pretty quickly, and there's not that much strategy to it. But there are some unique things that I really like about it that make it feel unique amongst tactics games, and has me interested in what a sequel could look like. And I'm curious if the Metal Slugs license, property, universe is what holds this game back by limiting what they could do. Because they do some funky things. You have the desert area where you'll be fighting against mummies and additional soldiers. And if they attack you, I don't know if they always do or if it's a chance to turn you into a mummy. And then you can take a lot of damage from certain enemies, but you can also deal a lot of damage. And you can use that to your advantage. But the two unique elements of the gameplay are sneak attacks and the fact that you always want to be on the move. So sneak attacks are whenever you are attacking an enemy, if your fellow allies are within range of their attacks, they will attack alongside you and do a double or triple attack. Using this strategically can allow you to do a lot of damage to enemies, and it's very beneficial against bosses. Bosses, I think just maybe it was the jungle boss, are very easy. The jungle boss was, I believe, the one that was just a pain because it kept moving back and forth and driving me fucking crazy. But the bosses I was able to brute force like crazy thanks to the sync attacks. And one of the things that also makes the game a lot easier is that after every single level, every battle, all of your health resets. All of your down troops resets. During a battle, you can pay to revive a teammate with this little kind of currency thing, but when the match is over and you've won, if you lose a match, it's game over, regardless if it's just a regular mission or a boss fight or whatever. But as long as you complete a mission successfully, you'll get all your characters back full health for the next mission. And that knowledge allows you to be a bit more reckless and take chances and be more aggressive in a way you can't in something like Into the Breach, where that's not going to come into play as much. But and you don't have any kind of overarching thing of having to protect the city or anything. There's nothing that's really carrying over between missions that you really have to worry about, except for the little currency thing that is related to your ability to revive teammates, which you get a limited number of those and you can only do that so many times. But I never revived any teammates. And that could have been, I forgot about that whole mechanic, and that sure did help me when I failed a mission with the two runs. But the other mechanic, way of play, the style that is unique is the fact that you always want to be on the move, because the way you build up dodge points and just dodge points is by moving your unit every single turn. And the further you move that unit and the obstacles you move them over, so if there's a gap and you have them jump over that, that'll be a bonus to this. But moving your character as much as possible, finding them cover, will give you cover bonus, which is 2, regardless of where an enemy is. So if you put yourself into cover and an enemy is right behind you, they're not going to be able to do any kind of backstab damage, and the cover is still going to be in play when they attack you, those points, because that's how it works. But then, depending on how long you move, what kind of movement you do, you'll get a certain number of dodge points, and this is for the next turn when you are taking damage, counted towards your defense and will prevent you from taking damage to your actual health. So if you do a very long movement and do it over a gap and then find cover, you can get potentially 3-4 points of dodge and 2 points for cover, allowing you to take 6 points of damage, up to 6 points of damage from however many enemies attack you. It's not a 6 points of damage once and then every other enemy is going to be able to attack you and take away from your health. This is 6 points of additional defense for every attack that round. So you are encouraged, and you have to move between every turn to not take damage and to survive. So that is interesting, but it just gets old fast. I was genuinely surprised by the fact that in both cases, in both runs, I kind of just wanted them to be over, and I haven't gone back since. The first run I did 3 different territories, and then the second run I just did the first territory, went on to the final area, got to the final boss, almost beat them, but played it recklessly and had all of my characters die in one turn so that I couldn't spend any of the revive points I wasn't using. So that was just on my bad, but I was one sync attack away from beating the boss. So again, I don't think it's super challenging. It's more on you to not just get so bored and complacent that you do stupid things and you don't care and you don't pay attention, and then you fucking die and you're like, oh shit, that was on me. But that's Metal Slug Tactics. Tetris Forever is the latest game from Digital Eclipse in their golden class. I forget the name of it, but their interactive documentary series where we've gotten the making of Karateka, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, and then Llama Soft, the Jeff Minter story. And now we have Tetris Forever. So there's not all that much to say about it. There's a lot of great footage, old and new, of the creator of Tetris and the guy who brought it to the States and all that. But basically, if you've seen the movie Tetris, those two people, whose names I can't remember, I think Hank, I don't know if it's Hank Rogers, and then I'm not going to try and name the creator of Tetris, but you get a lot of great footage, and it immediately made me want to rewatch that movie, and it bums me out that movie isn't available on Blu-ray. It just pisses me off so much. Fucking give me it. If Limited Run Games does a special version of Tetris Forever that includes a Blu-ray of that movie somehow, you got me again. I said never again, Limited Run Games, and then they fucking released the Double Fine Odyssey on Blu-ray, and I couldn't not buy that. But Tetris Forever is a great addition to that line, and if you are someone who enjoys the history of video games, and especially if you're a fan of Tetris, but even if you're not, if you just like the history of games and you want to learn more about Tetris specifically here, it's well worth checking out. The games included are a bit disappointing. It ranges from the very original version and DOS version all the way up to, I believe, Super Famicom and Game Boy Color, maybe. Nothing newer than that. And it is mostly Japanese versions of games, and one game that was helped in the inspiration. I think the only NES version of any game there is Hatris, which I do not like. I don't like Hatris. And then they have a game they made specifically for this collection, this interactive documentary called Tetris. I don't remember what it's called. Something, I don't know if it's called Tetris Generations, but it's basically just Tetris, and then you'll get these special blocks every now and again that can send you back to a different era of Tetris, which is a fun little novelty, but not that great or special. You're really here for all of the footage and information about Tetris that is really interesting and cool to see more games. I love that Digital Eclipse is doing this, and I want to see them do more of this. And I want fucking Tetris on Blu-ray. Gosh darn it. I'd even take it on DVD. I don't want it on DVD, I want it on Blu-ray, but fucking come on. Apple Plus, get your fucking shit together. Just fucking do it. It's such a good movie. It might be the best video game movie ever made. I love it so much, and it fucking sucks that we don't have it. Come on. I own 2 different Blu-ray copies of Double Dragon because it wasn't available in the States for a while. I imported a German copy, and then I got the MVD version of it. I think it's MVD. I own 2 copies of Double Dragon and 0 copies of Tetris. What the fuck is wrong with this world? And I don't know how many copies I own of Street Fighter, but all of those are warranted because that's a great movie. But that's Tetris Forever. Tinkertown is a cute little Minecraft-like, over-the-top pixel art style that I don't know when it's coming out now because they were delaying the release to iron out some kinks, and there's some kinks in it. Definitely UI is a bit cumbersome. I don't know if that's anything they're tweaking, but when building stuff, I had instances where I would build something and it wouldn't show up until I backed out and reconnected to the server. You can play this online with multiplayer or just solo, but it does a pretty good job of doling out new tasks and new things to find. The world is pretty casual and accessible and not very threatening. I played it for maybe 3 hours, played it for a bit early on, and then I went back to it and kind of just got lost in collecting goods, doing the tree punching stuff that these games are known for, and exploring the world little by little. It seems to be a decently sized world, but it's a much more chill experience than in some of the similar games. I fought some enemies, but they're not super threatening. I did come across a goblin base inside of a tree, and that seemed more daunting because I had not yet crafted any armor for myself, didn't make any powerful weapon. I was still using just a wooden sword, and they had bows and arrows that made it harder to deal with them, because any enemy that is melee focused and doesn't have any kind of quick attack or dash attack, you can just go in, swipe them, and back out before they can do any damage to you. So those types of enemies are not a problem at all, regardless of what you're equipped with. But it's definitely something to keep your eyes on. I'll probably play more of it because it's a nice game to just turn your brain off and listen to a podcast while you're playing or stuff like that. I had a good time with it. It just is a bit finicky with some of the UI and trying to do something in the menu and then getting stuck in the menu, wanting to do this, but I'm still in this menu and this thing is activating. And again, I will report back when it gets updated and we get the new official release date, which may be soon, maybe far along. I'm not entirely sure, but so far I've enjoyed what I played, regardless of those issues. And I hope all those things, or the ones that are the biggest concerns, are ironed out and it has a successful launch. Next is Selfloss. And this is a game, story-wise, I can't remember the exact details, but you're basically in a type of, I don't know if you're in the real world and you're just working for people dealing with those moving on, or if you're in that type of purgatory type area, but you're helping beings move on, animals. I don't know if you do it with any people, but the first area you help a sea turtle, I believe it is, not just a regular turtle. I think their little baby turtle sick and passed away, and then you just help move on. And it's supposed to deliver an emotional story, but I couldn't connect with it the way it wanted in the early going on. You talk to a lot of characters, and it's fine enough in terms of writing and all that. It's not bad by any means, but I just couldn't connect with it. And then the gameplay is very finicky. You're doing a lot of sailing around in your little boat in these little confined areas, and then very minor, simple puzzle solving, and then some combat, which in all of the respects, you have this little like hack thing, a sickle. That's the word I was looking for. I think it's a sickle that you have, so you can chop down some plants and attack enemies with it. But the hit detection is not great. So there are times you might have to do a time-sensitive puzzle, and you are shining this light you have with you to activate certain things, but you can only use its focus power so much before you run out of energy. And the only way to replenish it is to get that energy back that you've used, or in the area you might have a plant that'll give you a few bits of energy, and you get that by hacking it with your sickle. But even if you're right on it and it looks like you're hitting it, it might take 3 hits to get the actual plant to get destroyed. And that may be that it's requiring the 3 hits before it'll be chopped down, but there's no actual visual thing showing that. You're not getting any kind of visual cue that's happening, so it just feels broken. And even when you're attacking enemies, you might not hit them with that first or second hit, and that just makes the gameplay in general frustrating. And then the sailing around, when you're going through tighter spaces, there's a long area where you're going down a type of rapid bit of the river. It's very tedious and not fun. And yeah, it just ends up taking away and distracting from the emotional story it's trying to tell by being frustrating from a gameplay standpoint. And then even on its own, the story is not resonating with me on any kind of emotional level. But that is Selfloss. Vampire Hunters is a vampire survivors like, but instead of it being top down, it is first person. So it's a first person shooter vampires like, where you're not doing any of the shooting, you're just aiming and moving around the space, the 3D space, in a game that feels closest to, in terms of both visuals and playstyle, something like Serious Sam. You're just in these very small arenas, taking on hordes of enemies, collecting what they drop to level yourself up, add more weapons to your repertoire, and some buffs and stuff of that nature. It's fine and kind of fun, but because of the first person nature, the level design really comes into play in a negative way, in that, unlike my experience with your survivors likes, it's a lot easier in this because the way the levels are designed and how vertical they are, and also the AI, it's a lot easier to find places where you can funnel enemies through a specific path, and they won't, for some reason, they won't go down a different path and come up behind you. So you can take out a lot of enemies by just finding the right position and then staying there and letting the game fire and do all the work for you and just sit there. And that makes it significantly less engaging than other games of this kind, where you're constantly on the move, because you just end up sitting there, and then you wait for your superpower attack to build up so that you can kill a lot more at a time, and then you go walk down a little bit, collect all the stuff you've failed to get because you were just mowing down enemies and not being able to gain any distance. You You weren't losing distance, really, but you weren't gaining any distance, so you weren't able to collect it all. Use your powered-up weapon. Go down there, get all your orbs, level up a handful of times, rinse and repeat, and once you realize that works, kind of takes the excitement out of it. But I've only played it for an hour or so. Might play some more, but wasn't super into what I had played. And I was excited for it. I thought, ooh, a survivor's like, but first person. That sounds refreshing. I can't wait to try it. Oh, all right. But that is, again, Vampire Hunters. And Skaters, Solstice is one of those sliding puzzles where you don't have to collect all the things, but you basically have a point that you want to get to in order to complete the level. And you do this by sliding your character, in this case, in this ice skate rink, essentially, with things in the way that can halt your progress, so that you find the obstacle point, you go right here, you get stopped at this rock, then you go up and stop at this rock, left, right, and then you hit the point. That completes the level. One of those types of games, and it's solid. Nothing too special in terms of anything, visuals, music, gameplay, puzzle quality. It ramps up the difficulty nicely. The difficulty is paced well. It doesn't start off super easy and then super challenging right away. It builds the difficulty in a way that makes it not exciting. Exciting is the wrong word. That makes it's too extreme of a word, but it makes it engaging, so that you feel like you're constantly making progress and constantly building towards more and more challenging puzzles. So it's a solid little game. Get yourself some nice, easy achievements relatively quickly, and all of that. And then last is Hannah, which is very clearly inspired by Little Nightmares, where you're playing this little girl who wants to get back the pieces of her stuffed doll or something. It doesn't play well. It doesn't look well. It's not... It's just not that great. There are ways in which the fixed camera gets in the way in the first area, running away from these. It's not scary. It doesn't have a good sense of atmosphere because the way the levels are lit. It's not. The mood isn't there. The vibe isn't there. The atmosphere isn't there. The gameplay isn't there. What story is there? It's just a poor imitation of something like Little Nightmares that I enjoyed to a degree, but I had my issues with. But I definitely respected and enjoyed the visual stylings and the mood, vibe, etc. of Little Nightmares, which just wasn't there with Hannah. So that's a bit too bad. But that will do it for this here episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Once again, I am Mark Kuznez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you enjoy this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can support me and my nonsense over at patreon.com/PXS. There you can get access to a monthly Q&A, some fancy Discord roles, a private Discord channel, random drops on the Patreon every now and again, like the Sausage Dump put out an episode recently where I talked about Minority Report, Signs, and some other jazz. So if that interests you at all, that is again patreon.com/PXS, or you can just support me to support me if that is your fancy. In addition to the Patreon, you can find links to the site, the YouTube, the Discord, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. That is pxsausage.com. That is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have both a wonderful rest of your day, a lovely rest of your week, and a wonderful weekend. But for now, adios, arrivederci.